Bethany family, and honored guests. Can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah. Good.
Can you hear me now? My crazy Uncle Ned used to wear that phrase out. They said when he was a boy, he was always playing telephone with a couple of cans and a string. He'd yell in a can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And with his big voice, they could have heard him without the cans or the string. Well, that may sound like a useless kid's game, but believe it or not, it really paid off in his adult career. See, he got in on the ground floor of cell phone research and development. They claimed he was some kind of unparalleled genius at testing the reception quality or something. No matter where you were, there was Uncle Ned calling somebody just to test the reception on his cell phone saying, can you hear me now? How about now? Well, Daddy-centric nut really got on everybody's last nerve, if you ask me. Whether he was going through a tunnel in Pennsylvania, scuba diving in the Caribbean, or hunting Yetis in the Himalayas. Well, I've even seen him jump out of a perfectly good boat, swim under a beaver hut, stick his head up in the hut with the beavers just to test his cell phone reception. First of all, why would anybody need their friends to be able to call them in a beaver hut? And second of all, let's be honest, if that's where you're spending all your spare time, you don't have any friends. Well, speaking of spare time, if a man has his priorities straight, he should be spending his spare time fishing. And I can't give Uncle Ned that much credit. He did go fishing with us every chance he could. Now, granted, it was embarrassing to be seen out in public with that man, but that's to be expected with family. Well, as successful people go, Uncle Ned was an extremist in everything he did. And he had invented himself a 25-foot, double-barrel, bifurcated fishing pole with a 1,000-pound test braided piano wire fishing line just to cut through the weeds and whatnot. And when we tried to tell him, hey, buddy, that's just a little bit overkill, he'd scoff and get mad and say, why, boys, there's fish in there big enough to swallow a manhole. And we'd just laugh and make fun of him because we couldn't help ourselves. Well, we were out on the lake one day, trolling around, avoiding work. Just fishing a little, nothing too serious, except Uncle Ned in the back of the boat with his 25-foot double-barrel fishing rod, big around his 2 baseball bats, strapped into the leather body harness he had invented to help him hold that monstrosity. He had also fabricated 2 permanently attached, ergonomically correct gloves to the rod, so there's no way he could ever drop his pride and joy, even if he wanted to. It took 3 of us just to get him strapped into all that garb and set him up in a pedestal seat at the back of the boat. Well, we were right in the middle of arguing over which one of us was the greatest fisherman of all time. Duh. When all of a sudden, the boat started going backwards. The motor was still running forwards, but something was yanking the boat backwards. And the air was filled with what sounded like the emergency broadcasting system. That 1,000-pound test braided piano wire fishing line was cut in the air, stretched to the max, about to break, and screamed for mercy. And Uncle Ned was yelling, fish on, with his 25-foot double-barrel bifurcated fishing pole bent in half for the first time ever. Nobody knows how much pressure was on it, but something was about to break. And then Uncle Ned shot out of the back of the boat and landed about 150 feet behind the boat, amazingly standing upright. To our surprise, there was Uncle Ned, barefoot water skiing, behind whatever awful creature he'd hooked into. He was squeezing in and out of the no-wake buoys like competition water skiing. We were as shocked then as you are now. You can imagine. We had no idea Uncle Ned knew how to water ski, let alone barefoot. And then it dawned on us, square feet, wider than they were long, with webbed toes, which would have really helped with his weight displacement, making him a born natural at barefoot water skiing. Except he was all bent over, leaned over like a rookie, so we yelled, lean back, because your lower back can get really tired without the proper skiing posture. Then we noticed the water starting to turn as that monster headed to the surface. So we yelled, put your rod tips down, because that can keep him from jumping. But he wouldn't listen, because he was one of those guys who always had to do things his way. And suddenly, some kind of prehistoric fishosaurus jumped completely out of the water, splashing and whitewater thrashing and scales and tails and big glowing googly eyes in an aerial display of what can only be described as sheer horror. And then Uncle Ned leaned back, like we told him to, which put a little more pressure on that 25-foot rod of his, and turned that creature's head straight toward him, mouth wide open and gills flared, and Uncle Ned's square barefoot water skis slipped over the lips and gooms and disappeared into the belly of a tomb of the very behemoth that he had hooked into. It was as surprised as he did, with an expression of awe and wonderment on both of their faces. Uncle Ned did yell back, though, and I'll never forget his last words. He said, I told you there's fish in here big enough to swallow a man whole. He never missed a chance to say, I told you so. It all happened so fast. It was horrible. We tried to block it out of our minds, and then it was over as fast as it had begun. And we tried to regain our composure as the lake calmed down and became as smooth as a sheet of glass, with the sun setting in the background, and we were speechless. And then my cell phone rang. Uncle Ned! Uncle Ned! Maybe he hadn't spoken his last words after all. Hello? Hello? It was all part of the plan, boy. Can you hear me now?